Hey there everyone, welcome back or welcome to our channel. My name is Ashley and this is Life After Trauma. In last video we discussed a bit about what trauma and dissociation is. In today's video we will be discussing what that is like for us and going over a little bit about our system as well. Okie dokie, disclaimer time. The statements in these videos are of my own opinion. I am not an expert and will never claim to be, and I am not a therapist. The statements in my videos are of my perspective of trauma treatment and may not match yours. Also, while I attempt to explain things in my own words, things may not sound perfectly scientifically correct. While I will do research when needed, a lot of my information is coming from things I have learned while in therapy. Any sources I do use will be in the description below. Also, I want to note I will be discussing the different symptoms that I experience with my mental illnesses, and a little bit about the trauma I have gone through. I will not be disclosing my full trauma history at this time, and I will not do so unless I find it to be helpful to me or my system. If you find discussions of mental health topics, including things like flashbacks, dissociation, alcohol abuse, and thoughts or actions of harming oneself difficult to hear, please stop the video. If you choose to continue, please do so in a safe manner. I will be including timestamps below so you can skip around to find different parts of the video. Okay, so let's first go over the different diagnoses that I have. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Now this we can easily figure out what it means just based off of the name. It's a mental health disorder that happens post or after a traumatic stress. This is mainly known, at least here in America, as something that war veterans get. In fact, if you're a young adult and you tell someone here in America that you have PTSD, chances are they're going to ask you where you've been deployed. Now this recognition is actually kind of cool because up until 1980, PTSD wasn't even a thing. And veterans returning home to the United States were slapped with a bunch of random labels that did not fully encapsulate what they were experiencing, and then also treatment plans that were not helpful. Nowadays, it is recognized as pretty much anyone who goes through a traumatic event can develop PTSD. It really depends on a mixture of your own biology, the type of traumatic event, and if you received support after the event to determine if you will develop PTSD or not. So how is it diagnosed? Well, it's during a visit with a trained mental health professional, and if you meet the following diagnostic criteria. You have to have experienced at least one big T trauma. The trauma is persistently re-experienced in at least one of these. Avoiding reminders of the trauma or trauma-related stimuli in at least one way. At least two different negative thoughts or feelings that started or got worse after the trauma. And at least two trauma-related reactivities or arousals. Now these symptoms have to go on for at least a month, cause some kind of distress or functional difficulty in your life, and not be caused by medications, drug or alcohol abuse, or any other mental illness that better describes your symptoms. Now, the complex in nature addition to my PTSD simply means that my PTSD started from trauma that happened early in life and is caused by complex trauma. Dissociative identity disorder, DID, was formerly known as multiple personality disorder. Its criteria in the DSM-5 is disruption of identity characterized by two or more distinct personality states. This disruption involves marked discontinuity in sense of self and agency, with changes in mood, behavior, consciousness, memory, perception, cognition, and/or sensorimotory function. This can be observed by the individual or others. Reoccurring gaps in memory and the ability to recall everyday events, important personal information, or traumatic events that are inconsistent with ordinary forgetfulness. These symptoms cause significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning in life. The symptoms are not caused by normal parts of broadly accepted cultural or religious practices, like children with imaginary friends. The symptoms are not caused by medications, drug or alcohol abuse, or any other mental illness that would better describe them. DID is typically caused by complex trauma. Some quick DID vocab for us going forward. The different personality states listed in the criteria can be referred to as alters, parts, or identities. Now, not everyone is comfortable using these to describe what they experience, but this is what I have seen used the most, and it is what I use for ourselves personally. When an alter gains control of the body, that is referred to as switching or fronting. This usually means that all the other alters are dissociated from the conscious mind. But it is possible for more than one alter to be conscious or aware at the same time. This is referred to as co-consciousness, co-con, or co-fronting. There is something called passive influence as well, where an alter influences the thoughts and emotions of another without really trying. This can also be referred to as bleeding. A system refers to a collection of alters in one person. Now, this is something that not everyone uses the term for, but I like it to refer to ourselves as a whole or the collection of alters as a whole. Now, integration refers to the system as a whole becoming more cooperative and dissociative barriers between alters lowering. Fusion refers to alters joining together into one identity or alter. If you've seen Dragon Ball, think the fusion dance. Now, final fusion is a treatment goal that some people go through. This means that all of the alters are formed into one cohesive identity. There are no longer dissociative barriers, and there is no longer amnesia between parts. Functional multiplicity is another treatment goal that some people choose. This is where the alters remain, but the dissociative barriers are not as severe, amnesia is not as severe, and the group of alters or system work together in a cooperative format. Understanding DID fully is not really a place we are at in the mental health world, and there is still some debate on whether or not DID even exists, which is BS. But more importantly, how it forms and the deeper inner workings of it. There is a theory called the theory of structural dissociation, and it basically states we are all born with multiple aspects of ourselves. We have our hungry self, our sleepy self, our change my diaper now self, etc. And as we age, these selves fuse together into one full identity state. But if something happens to interrupt that fusion, like trauma, those parts do not come together, and instead they each develop separately from each other with dissociative barriers in between the parts, keeping the knowledge of themselves and different memories, especially of trauma, secret from one another. These parts are then categorized as apparently normal parts, ANPs, and emotional parts, EPs. ANPs carry out the day-to-day life functions and look normal on the surface, whereas EPs hold memories of the trauma and tend to be more maladaptive. Now, this whole thing is still a theory and has some issues, and to be honest, we're not really involved with it. Trying to squish each of us into these labels that we don't really know are for real just causes way too many headaches, to be honest. And with the controversy surrounding this theory, we don't even know if some other expert will come along in 10 years and disprove it. So we decided as a system not to really worry about if we fit into this explanation or if we are ANPs or EPs or whatever other labels we would have. I think of my DID as a bunch of sets of cabinets. We have our trauma pants from last video shoved into our sock drawer, but we kept collecting and collecting those pants and we ran out of space in the first cabinet. So we had to get another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And we even ran out of spaces for the normal socks for our everyday lives, so we had to get new cabinets for those too. Now, each of these cabinets represents an alter, and since these cabinets are made of big solid wood, they have dissociative barriers around them, which means that memories, either from everyday events or trauma, does not really easily get shared between them. There is also the issue of jobs or alter roles. Each alter is supposed to have some kind of role or way that they interact with the system and the world around them. And this is also something we don't really focus on too much. We do have some obvious ones. These would be protectors, alters that front to either take abuse or get away from the abuse or protect in some way. Trauma holders are alters who keep a hold of trauma memories and keep them away from other parts of the system. Caretakers are alters that take care of things either internally or externally. They are helpful and have a self-soothing role for the system. A host, which is an alter that fronts the most and kind of manages daily life. Child parts are alters that present as a young age. And persecutors, which are alters that internalize and continue abusive habits from trauma. Through the years, our system has changed and these jobs have changed and shifted a lot. These are not all the roles possible for alters out there or ones that other people will experience, but they are the ones we can easily pick out as someone in our system has. Okay, now it's time to actually discuss my system. As I said before, DID is not all that makes me me. And I mean that. And DID is also not all about the alters. They're actually just a small part of it. But my alters are all different parts of what makes up me as a whole. And while I'm sharing my healing journey, they are bound to show up. So it's best to kind of introduce you to them now. Also, through the power of dissociation, each of us feels, acts, and identifies as their own separate person. But if you x-rayed my brain, you are not going to see a bunch of different brains shoved up in my skull. So logically, we do know that we are all just parts that make up one whole identity or one whole person, but we do not feel that way. Yes, alters are real and valid, but they are literally not separate people shoved into one whole body. Alters can also have their own appearance that is separate from the body. And in some systems, there is also something called an inner world, which is basically a place in your mind that inner representations of alters can form and interact with one another. This is usually thought to be either a cause of maladaptive daydreaming or a tool used in therapy for visualization and increasing communication between parts. Parts can communicate with each other internally. This is similar to intrusive thoughts in those without alters. This is completely different from auditory or outside the mind cues or hallucinations that people with schizophrenia can go through. Any communication with parts always comes from basically inside your head instead of outside your head. Our system consists of 13 alters. Today I will be discussing the ones that are most likely to front for videos, as some of the other alters are still a mystery. I will also not really go into huge detail about who they are as people, as again, we are all parts of a whole, and I think it's best to let them represent themselves when and if they want to. Another thing specific to my system is that in our inner world, each alter has an animal companion. I think this is due to animals being so important and soothing to all of us, and I find the companions seem to match each alter's personality. So first up is me. Yes, I am technically an alter. I am what can be referred to as a host. Now, while there is no core personality in DID, I do kind of feel like one. I am the one who identifies with this face and birth name. I am the one fronting the most, and this life is mine, by which I mean that I'm the one who has a final say on what we do, and I take full responsibility of what my body says or does, even if I'm not aware of it. My alters have also taken on a protective role when it comes to me, and even refer to my family as mine, not necessarily theirs. I am typically not aware of when I am not fronting, so I do not have much experience with our inner world firsthand. Next we have Solène. She is 20 years old, she is our main protector, and she is usually the one closest to the front or co-con quite frequently. Very blunt and stubborn with a short temper. Solène is the first alter I became aware of, and we have a close bond. She likes women's soccer, sharing jokes and memes, and her companion is a tiger. Nikki is 18 and is now kind of a backup host. She is very good at social interactions and likes to go out and have fun. She is also helpful with communication in the system as she is able to reach out to other parts easily. She enjoys getting outside, camping, fishing, being active, and she has a red fox as her companion. Chloe is a child part. She is 5. Some systems child parts do not typically act like children, but Chloe does. She is pretty separated from any trauma memories and is a very happy part. She loves Hello Kitty and coloring, and she has a flock of pink flamingos with her all the time. Celine is 11. She is a trauma holder. She is very subdued and shy. Big emotions tend to cause distress, and she tries to avoid sleeping to prevent nightmares. She likes art, mainly painting, Pokemon, nature, Harry Potter, and reading. Her companion is a barn owl. Now our system has 2 main caretakers. Andrew is 22, loves the outdoors, and he looks after young parts. He has a golden eagle for a companion. And Jessie, who is 28. She is warm and caring and likes to be organized. She mainly helps out Nikki. She has a very large dog for a companion. Now, this may not seem like a lot of info, but I'm pretty proud of it because it has taken years to get this much. Between writing in journals or leaving notes for each other or different parts coming out and talking with my fiance, who then fills me in, it has been hard to learn anything about my system. But that is the nature of DID, smoke and mirrors. Our system is pretty covert when it comes to being out in the world. My alters will act like me and will go by my name, and our switches are really not that noticeable unless you know exactly what you're looking for. This is mainly because DID is a protective mechanism. It sections off the knowledge of horrible abuse so other parts can get up, dust themselves off, and keep going. This is also important to retain social connections because we as humans are social creatures and do need connections, whether it be with other people not related to the abuse or even our own abusers. This is helpful because parts that are unaffected by the abuse can act like normal, good children that the abusers want to either not inflict more abuse on themselves or to avoid retribution for the knowledge of what the abusers is doing coming out. This is also helpful to preserve our will to live because while one part may be struggling, other parts are able to keep the body alive. This is all super awesome until it's not, because at the end of the day, it's very maladaptive. And myself as Ashley, I really only get access to the part of my consciousness that is made for Ashley. Living with DID and complex PTSD has sucked a lot. As we discussed earlier, trauma literally changes your brain. And before I started therapy, I was a very unregulated person. At any given time, my emotions would rage out of control and I would either be horribly depressed, seething with rage and aggression, or giddy and manic. A lot of times when my emotions were like this, I dissociated and another part would switch out and take control of my actions and my life. Managing triggers was almost a full-time job. Triggers are things that remind you of your traumatic event and can cause something called flashbacks to happen. A flashback is when your mind and body feel and act as if it is reliving the entire traumatic experience. Now this can happen in various ways of being either a full-blown audio, visual, and body sensation flashback, or it can happen in little tidbits, or in just certain areas, be it visual, auditory, or just body sensations. Sometimes these triggers could even cause a switch between my alters, and they themselves could also have their own flashbacks. Or my least favorite, when I would have a flashback triggered for a trauma I had no idea actually happened, and once the flashback is done, I can't remember the content of the actual flashback. So the visual or auditory memories that I was experiencing, I cannot remember what those were. All I have is my body still feeling this panic and fear and sometimes pain, and I have no idea what caused it or what had happened. I also struggle with memory and focus, and sometimes learning new things is hard. This especially makes dealing with people in a social situation hard because I may either dissociate, become dysregulated, or my severe anxiety about trusting strangers gets in the way and makes me isolate. Managing tasks at home or taking care of myself has always been a struggle, mainly because I will forget about the task I need to do, or I just will not focus on them, or I cannot focus on them to actually get my tasks done. Fear is a huge trigger for me. Anytime I feel afraid, and it could be situations where I have no reason to actually be afraid, it would trigger horrible rage. I would say things I did not want to say, or in ways I did not want to, or it would cause Selene to switch out, and in her efforts to protect me, she would be really verbally abusive to people, or she would throw things or punch walls. And that is not okay. That is not the type of Ashley I want to be. Selene and I also struggle with self-harm and suicidal thoughts or actions. Before I started my therapy journey in late 2020, I had a close call, and I was almost not here anymore. Before that, I had been trying to control my thoughts and urges with alcohol, and that did not work. As scary as this sounds, it was a jolt I needed to shake me to my core and realize I need help. The self-help and research I was doing on my own were not working anymore. Before my therapy, my life was ruled by DID and complex PTSD, and it all started in my childhood. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, physical and emotional abuse and manipulation, domestic violence, and sexual assault. And I have not been in a traumatic or abusive situation for 14 years, but my brain does not know that. And anytime there is a trigger, I am right back there, living every detail all over again. Or I dissociate and lose hours or days or weeks, or in the past, sometimes months at a time. I have huge chunks of my childhood and my teen years that I cannot remember. And this is all because some shitty people in my life decided to hurt me. But I am doing much better now. Since starting my CPT last year, I have made some awesome improvements. I am able to self-soothe and regulate much better now, so my emotions don't get away from me. I am able to stay present and grounded, and that is the opposite of being dissociated or having a flashback. And being able to do that is much easier for me now. My dissociation has become less frequent, but I also know that if I do switch or lose time, my alters also have these skills that we have learned in CPT. So Selene is much more even-tempered now, and Selene resists self-harm urges. And I have been able to process some pretty traumatic memories, to the point that some of them don't even bother me anymore. We still have a lot of work to do, but we are healing as a system, because trauma is treatable. And this is our life after trauma. I hope this video was informative or helpful in some way. This basically wraps up what we deal with and who we are, so now we can discuss things like CPT. I am aiming for the next video to be a summary of what CPT is, and then go into the details in further separate videos. But thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, share the video everywhere, share your own stories if you want. And I will see you later. Bye!